On today's show, Houston Rockets training camp day 3. Kevin Durant discusses the point guard situation and playmaking by committee. Ime Udoka hints at 4 penciled in starters and more. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. And joining us now is your new weekly co-host, Sports Radio 610's Brandon Scott. He did so good those first couple episodes, we decided to keep him around long-term this season. B. Scott, what's up, my guy?
Man, I feel like every time you come out and do one of these, it's an audition for the next one, right? Like you can never rest on your laurels, never feel like you're too established, right? So every time we do one of these, it's like an audition for the next one. So I'm glad that people are enjoying it. And I'm enjoying it too, man. It's really good Rockets conversation, especially before they even get to play the games. We get to be on the record with some of our thoughts on these things. So I'm having a good time, man.
Man, I'm so excited to have you as part, along for the journey this season, Brandon. It's going to be a really fun season to be able to cover with you, man. And we got some good stuff to talk about on today's show. Rockets training camp day 3 in the books. We heard from Kevin Durant finally, outside of, what he said, at media day, which was basically his first, his introductory press conference basically for the Rockets. So we heard some thoughts from him about how camp is going so far. We also heard from Ime Udoka a little bit, Ime kind of tipping his, showing his hand a little bit as to maybe what the starting situation is going to look like for this team moving forward, what some of the starters are going to be, some of the stuff from Kevin Durant. We're going to be getting into the point guard situation, as well as he had some thoughts on Tari being snubbed on the ESPN Top 100 list and kind of Reed's growth and aggressiveness so far through training camp. So some good stuff both from KD and Udoka. And then a little bit later on, we're going to talk about Jabari, who's really trying to soak up as much knowledge as he can from KD, like a sponge, and what that might mean for him in a possible breakout season this year. Let's go ahead and we're going to throw it out to, we're going to hear a little bit from KD here at the top of the show, and then we'll talk about what he had to say. So let's run this clip back.
You've been playing as long as you have, and you come to a new team. Is there still a learning curve?
Yeah, most definitely. Just learning everybody's tendencies, understand the terminology. A lot of this stuff is pretty much the same, across the league as far as calls are concerned, schemes, but learning the terminology, understanding each player and strengths and weaknesses, and understanding the coaching staff and what they need from you. It's a little easier transition than it would be, years ago.
Is that a fun challenge, though, at this point in your career?
Most definitely. First day of practice is always fun, and trying to understand what the system's going to be, and like I said, how I can be my best and help the team in that situation. So, been learning a lot the last few days. Like I said, things are happening quick. Coach is expecting us to pick up things very quickly, so it's been fun.
You played without a point guard. You played without a point guard for long stretches in Phoenix. Do you think that helped you grow as a player now? And what do you think about the point guard situation you guys got here?
I feel like I can play with point guard without a point guard, but I think it's best for our team to have guys that can handle the ball, make smart plays, make efficient plays, that can be aggressive out top with the ball. It might not necessarily be a guy in the point guard's body, but somebody who can just, make smart plays out top with the ball and control the game. So I think we'll all have to figure it out and do it, like Coach said, do it by committee. But mainly it's just keeping the ball in our hands, getting a good shot at the rim every time.
Played against Alperen and Ime the last couple of seasons as an opponent. Is there anything that stood out to you or maybe you didn't notice before that you notice now as you've been practicing with them?
Just how connected everybody is. The dialogue is pretty open. The truth can be told without guys getting in their feelings about it. So I just felt like they were always a connected group, and especially Alpy and Twin I felt like they were always on the same page as opponents, but being around them is even more so. everybody's trying to get a feel for each other, and it's been a good 3 days.
Shout out to Space City Home Network for the super high quality interview footage there. And then if you want to see the full KD interview, as well as we're going to talk a little bit about what Ime Udoka had to say in a moment, go check those out over at Lashard Binkley's channel, Rocket Fuel on YouTube. He has both full interviews in their entirety. So go support him, fellow Houston media member. I want to say the thing that stood out to me most here, Brandon, about what KD had to say when he was asked about the point guard situation in Houston. And he specifically, I wrote these in my notes, not in a point guard's body, controls the game, makes smart plays. If that doesn't scream Alperen Sengun as far as who's going to be maybe dictating and running some of this Rockets offense, especially given what we expect and know about what Sengun is capable of, what we saw during that Eurobasket run, I don't know what else to think, because that seems like KD's insinuating Sengun is going to be running a lot of the offense.
Yeah, so Sengun is an obvious candidate there for the description that you get from KD, as you just said, like not in a point guard's body or what you might think of a point guard traditionally, right? Like I see what he's getting at, but I would even point to, like, I would pair that with what Ime Udoka has said previously. Maybe this was media day or at some point in the media availabilities over the last few days, but when he talks about it being a committee, I think this was media day, when he talks about it being more of a committee approach, like I look at Alperen Sengun the same way that you did, like when you hear those quotes from, or you hear that audio from Kevin Durant. But when I think about what Ime Udoka is talking about with a committee, I am thinking about sort of all of them, all of the, let's just call them playmakers on the team. And we can start with Alperen Sengun if you want, or we can include Kevin Durant in that mix. We can include Thompson in that mix. Really anybody that you feel comfortable having the ball and initiating the offense can be not necessarily the point guard, because those guys aren't necessarily point guards, but the initiator of an offense. You know, like I've been saying this, I mentioned this on my podcast, on the B Block podcast, that, you know, I'm perfectly fine and comfortable with the idea of Thompson catching the ball off the rim after some frenetic defensive possession and the offense being initiated by just the sheer force that is Thompson, right? I'm perfectly comfortable with when they do catch it out of the net, that the first person to touch the ball on the inbounds play being Kevin Durant or Thompson, or if it's Shepard, or if it's Alperen Sengun. Basically, they've got a number of guys that can just simply bring the ball up the court and get you to half court, like just that simple task. And I say simple task, sometimes it could be, if you don't have a ball handler, it can be a lot more. It can look a little rough. It can be easier said than done. I don't want to minimize it or gloss over it, but they do have guys that are capable of doing that. And then once you get in the half court setting, I'm comfortable with, hey, just get the ball to Thompson and let's initiate from there. Get the ball to Alperen Sengun and let's initiate from there, whether it's Alpi doing this thing in the high post, at the elbow, just getting it down to him in the post, or if it's give the ball to Kevin Durant, as simple as that sounds. Like, all of those things sound like viable options to me, even if you don't have that traditional point guard and that conventional initiator of the offense. So I could actually see this. I wrote in my notes that when Ime Udoka said committee approach, I did not view that as just lip service. I could see the validity in that. And I think what we just heard from KD also reflects the same thing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it will take a committee approach. There isn't one singular player who can replace what Fred VanVleet did for this team. And at the end of the day, you know, there is one guy who might be able to step up and do some of what Fred VanVleet did. And he's going to be a guy that we're going to talk about here in just one moment. Well, Kevin talked about him. We're going to talk about what Kevin had to say about him and how he might be, you know, that potential fifth starter for the Houston Rockets. And that guy is, of course, Shepard. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Look, most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or different investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table, and nobody wants to do that. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy to use interface on your laptop or your smartphone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. So if you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. They do all of the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a single spreadsheet. Monarch was great for me because it finally helped me stop forgetting about subscription services that I wasn't even using, because there's no worse feeling than you check your bank statement and you see like a 10 or 15 or $25 charge for something that you're not even using anymore. And you're like, oh, I need to cancel that. You tell yourself that, and then fast forward a month later and same thing happens and you get charged the exact and you're kicking yourself again, right? It's a vicious cycle. Doesn't happen anymore with Monarch. They help you categorize your monthly spending so that you can finally get rid of those subscription services that you don't care about anymore. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. So we were talking about it there in segment one, this whole, kind of playmaking by approach, playmaking by committee thing that the Rockets, seemingly will have going on this season. Ime Udoka talked about it at Media Day, and it seems to be the approach that the Rockets are going to have to take from, kind of the jump, just because they don't have somebody who can truly step into Fred's shoes, at least not right away. But the hope is that Sheppard, the guy that they drafted formerly number 3 overall, just, a couple short years ago, he's the guy that they hope can eventually blossom into that eventual kind of floor general role, that point guard, quarterback on the court, that kind of thing. And he's been getting high praise all around, like organizationally. The players are hyped talking about him. Kind of some behind the scenes, like I've been hearing good things about Reed, which is always a great sign. And KD had this to say about Reed when he was asked about the highlight that was kind of going viral the other day with that little scoop shot that Reed hit over the top of KD's outstretched arms. And Durant had this to say. He goes, Reed's been aggressive the whole camp. That's what we've all been encouraging him to do. Look for his game, be aggressive, shoot the ball. The more he's aggressive, the better we'll be as a team. And I really do think that, when you start to look at the different pieces that the Rockets have, Reed is this one. He's the guy that has, kind of a high level of variance to where he could be, the floor could be really, really low, or this, but also conversely, the ceiling is really, really high for him. And kind of pairing that with what Ime Udoka actually said a little bit, later on in his media availability after Kevin Durant spoke, where Ime kind of teased the fact that he's got basically 4 penciled in starters at this point. And, it's that 5th one that they're trying to figure out who's going to ultimately be the 5th. And we'd talked about this already a little bit, Brandon, about who deserves to be the 5th starter for this team. Granted, we recorded that show before the Fred VanVleet injury, which certainly changed the calculus on some of this a little bit. But am I safe in assuming, actually, I'll let you take a crack at it. Who do you believe in your heart of hearts are the 4 penciled in starters that Ime Udoka has right now?
So I was going to get ahead of myself and just jump right into Reed, but let's do that though. Let's answer your question. So 4 penciled in starters. I feel like Kevin Durant is a safe bet. Can we go ahead and put him in pen? Can we?
Yeah, put him in video. Put him in Sharpie, please. Okay. Actually take a chisel and etch him in stone. He's not going anywhere except for the games that he can't play due to injury or something. Okay,
or injury or being 37 or whatever the case may be. If it's an opponent that they feel like they can survive without him, but I'm just trying to imagine the nightmare scenario of Ime Udoka taking his eraser and going, you know what, this Kevin Durant guy is going to come off the bench. Let me erase him off the. So let's go ahead and put. I know we said pencil. We're going to go ahead and put him in pen. I think we can put Alperen Sengun in pen. And so from there, right? What are we talking about? I think
you can still pin one more guy, and that's probably.
I think we can pin Ime Thompson in there, right? Ime Thompson at least has come off the bench before, but not since he really arrived last year after the Jabari Smith Jr. injury. So we can really pin all 3 of those guys in, and then I'm gonna go ahead and pencil in, especially since, I think. There are 2 things that were significant since we had that previous conversation about the 5th starter and who we thought it could be. I know both of us ended up landing on Dorian Finney-Smith. Spoiler alert, if you didn't see that episode, go back and check it out. But, both of us landed on Dorian Finney-Smith by the end of it. But, of course, we find out and realize and understand Dorian Finney-Smith is going to, take some time, getting is sort of ingratiated into things with his injury as well, and he's not going to necessarily be available to them in the very, very beginning. So let's take him out of the equation, right? So now we don't have Fred VanVleet, we don't have Dorian Finney-Smith. So I'm penciling in Jabari Smith Jr. as that fourth guy, and putting those other three guys that we mentioned in pen, which does leave us now with that fifth starter. Again, back to our initial conversation from a few weeks ago, who is that fifth starter going to be? Obviously now, like you mentioned, the calculus has changed, and so we got to reconsider some things.
And it's certainly, and it's not a guarantee. It feels like a lot of the signs are pointing towards Reed Sheppard, but there's still an argument to be made that you could have viable options both with Tari Eason as that fifth starter, or even Steven Adams if you just want to go with that crazy jumbo supersized lineup and have Amin Thompson be the smallest dude on the floor. Like any one of those three lineup iterations would ultimately work. But I do kind of feel like at the end of the day, for the Rockets to be able to achieve some of the things they want to do on the floor from a spacing perspective and being able to truly unlock the best version of their offense, we are going to see versions of that lineup where Amin is at the one and they've got the jumbo lineup. We are going to see versions where you've got Tari out there with that same group. But it really does feel like, to me at this point, with all the hype coming out of camp, with how excited the players are talking about Reed, with how happy Ime Udoka seems to be talking about Reed Sheppard, it kind of feels like Reed Sheppard is going to be the Rockets' fifth starter this season. That's kind of where I've settled in on things, Brandon.
Yeah, so I'm very careful about reading too much into the.
I see what you did there. Reading.
Yeah. Pun intended. Reading, REED, too much into what they say and the vibes of and I'm not here to minimize. Here we are talking about it and doing shows about it and podcasts and segments and everything. Like it's important, but I don't want to read too much into it, knowing that things can change, or that a lot of it's real easy to feel good about things at this point before they've actually played games, before some of these ideas that we talk about and that they talk about are put into practice. That I cover the Texans as well, right? And there was a lot of preseason hype and talk about what things were going to look like at the preseason. And then you get to it and they start off 0-3, right? And nothing looks as good as it was projected to look or believed to look back when everything was sunshines and rainbows, in the preseason or in training camp and all that kind of thing. So with that caveat, though, I want to be on record. Okay, I don't know what they're going to do, Jackson. They can do whatever they want, right? And I agree with your initial point of they've got options here, and not just options, but I think good options, ones that we don't necessarily have to disagree or have some kind of conniption over. Like if they go with Steven Adams or if they go with Tari Eason, I don't feel like any of us are going to be like, oh my God.
They're all legitimate options, and there's legitimate arguments for every single one is the crazy part.
Legitimate options and legitimate arguments, as you say. But I want to be on record here on the Locked On Rockets podcast and sitting here with you. I would start Reed Sheppard. And I think that Reed Sheppard should start. I would at least start off starting Reed Sheppard and give that a chance to fail. And I'm not saying it's going to fail, but I think that they've got enough runway and they got enough good options to where if that is not ideal and not working out the way that, everyone would like for it to, they could just make a move. They could just simply do something different once they decide that it's not working the way that they wanted it to. But what I would do initially is make sure that it's failing, like make sure that it's not working before I just rule it out. It doesn't have as much to do with the hype around Reed Sheppard, for me at least, and this is just me talking, as much as it does for me just logic and the idea that Reed Sheppard has to step up. It is, to me, it is time for him to step up. I don't think that it is unreasonable to ask of Reed Sheppard to be their sixth or seventh best player on this team. Like we know who the top three are. And I feel like, the guys like Jabari Smith and Tari Eason, and when Dorian Finney-Smith comes back, there are guys that will be able to make that case for fourth and fifth and sixth best player. But for him to be the sixth or seventh best player, I don't think is outside the realm of possibility. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation or thing to ask of him. Number 3 overall pick. And And it's not just that he's a number 3 overall pick. It's not just that his teammates and coaches are hyping him up, but it's also the fact that we have seen glimpses of what that can look like in its most ideal circumstances. Like, we can go back to that Oklahoma City game. I can't get it out of my mind, honestly. The Oklahoma City game from, I guess it was March or somewhere around there.
It was near the tail end of the season. Yeah.
Near the tail end of the season. It's a lot of guys that weren't available, and Reed Sheppard and Cam Whitmore, shout out to him. They go out there and, play their tails off and look like the guys that everybody that's clamoring for those guys to play more, they were validated that night, because Reed Sheppard and Cam Whitmore as well, but Reed Sheppard more specifically here to this conversation, went out there and showed you why you might draft a guy like that, number 3 overall. I felt like that was a kind of a question at the time. Like, is this just a weak draft? Is he really a number 3 overall pick? Well, you got to see what it looks like, because that was the real life Oklahoma City Thunder there, right? It was Skeleton Crew Rockets. But if you remember, that was the Oklahoma City Thunder that won the championship.
Because they were pushing. They were trying to rack up as many wins as possible. They were going for they were killing every team they came across.
Correct. He did not go up against their D League, G League, JV, whatever you want to call it. It was the actual Oklahoma City Thunder. So I say all that to say, I think it's time for Reed Sheppard to step up. I think that he provides a very specific and unique quality to this offense that honestly they could have used last year, but you understood why he wasn't necessarily getting all those opportunities. This is the year for him to not only get those opportunities, but to take advantage of them. So I'm looking squarely at Reed Sheppard.
He is the closest 1-for-1 replacement, pound for pound, to what you could get out of Fred VanVleet if you get the good version of Reed, if you get the version of Reed that you want to get, right? And again, nobody's asking him to be Fred VanVleet. I think that's an unfair expectation for a year 2 player.
Agreed.
But just from a theoretical perspective and the skill sets that they both have and the roles that they both play on the basketball floor, that's the closest you get to replicating what Fred VanVleet was supposed to be for this team at that point guard position. And just from that perspective alone, right? Because you could make it work with the other. You could make it work with Tari. You could make it work with DFS. You could when he comes back, that is. You could make it work with Adams, right? But all of those other lineups, even though they all have their own merit to them, they're all also a little bit kind of unconventional in certain ways, right? Whereas this one gives you a more traditional lineup. You have a traditional point guard, another floor spacer. You have 3 guys who can space the floor and shoot well with Reed, KD, Jabari, and then you have Sengun and Amin, who are your 2 non-shooters, but they're your kind of do-it-all Swiss Army knife guys that can do a little bit of everything on the floor except for shoot the ball. So I think that gives the Rockets the most overall balance. And at the end of the day, the biggest question mark for me is going to be less so about the offense, because it's not that Reed's not going to get thrown into the starting lineup and be like, all right, you need to go out there and all the offense is going to run through you and you got to create everything. No, he'll be able to lean very heavily on KD and Sengun and Amin. They're all going to have the rock in their hands so much. He's not going to be relegated to just a spot up 3-point shooting role, but he'll have a lot of opportunities to do just that, as well as walking the ball up and initiating some sets here and there. The biggest question for me is going to be, can Reed hold up defensively? And we know that at Media Day, he talked about how much effort he was putting in on the defensive side of the basketball, that he was really focusing on the attention to detail there, that he's gotten bigger and stronger this offseason. And so he's he's more capable or more prepared to handle the physicality of the NBA this season. And so those are going to be the things that I'm looking at here, especially in these first couple preseason games. Just to see, what does Reed Sheppard look like dealing with legitimate NBA competition? Does he look like he's, too small? Does he look a little slow on defense? Or does he look like he's up to par and where he needs to be able to stick with the competition at this level? It's certainly a fascinating discussion. And unfortunately, we're not going to get the answer as soon as we thought we would. We thought we were going to get the answer this upcoming Monday, the Rockets' first preseason game against the Atlanta Hawks. And Ime Udoka said otherwise, because he's got other plans for us. We're going to talk a little bit about what Ime Udoka had to say here in a minute, as well as an interesting tidbit on Jabari Smith Jr. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss out on. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, $5 only, and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the FanDuel app. And FanDuel is so great because it gives you so many different ways to play. You can build out parlays, you can try different player props, you can even follow the live betting lines during the games themselves. Or maybe you just want to keep things simple. Go check out the odds-on favorites to win the Super Bowl this season. Right now, the Bills sitting at plus 430, the Eagles at plus 600, the Lions plus 850, the Packers and Chiefs both sitting at plus 900, and then right behind them, the Baltimore Ravens at plus 1100. So for all those odds and so much more, go check them out at FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, Brandon, unfortunately, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer than we thought we would to find out the Rockets' prospective starting lineup because Ime Udoka has other plans. Similar to what he's done the past couple preseasons, he's not ready to show his full hand yet, unfortunately. He told media at day 3 of training camp that the tentative plan for these first 2 home preseason games is going to basically be playing half the starters in the first game and resting the other half, and then doing the vice versa of that in game 2. So we really won't find out here, unfortunately, who that, that 5th starter is and who the penciled in 4 guys are at this point, although we have a pretty good idea of who the 4 are at this point, as we already kind of highlighted there in segment 2. So that's a little unfortunate at the end of the day, because it would be nice to get some concrete, understanding of, okay, these are going to be the 5 guys that the Rockets are going to war with starting at the beginning of the season. And honestly, even then, it could still be a thing where Ime was asked, could it be a fluid thing based on certain matchups and whatnot? And Ime basically said, it could be, and we've considered that. But at the end of the day, you want to reward the guys who have worked hard, and you want to be able to get guys that continuity and get them used to their roles. So rather than, plugging and moving guys around and having a guy start one game and then off the bench the next game, it is really hard. It's not easy for players to just be dragged around and have their roles change around, because you want to have an understanding going into a game, what your role is going to be, what your minutes are going to look like, where you're going to be able to make your impact. Are you playing against the starters? Are you playing against the bench? There's so much that goes into the preparation for a game. And you've heard, different players over time talk about the differences between starting and coming off the bench. Now, coming off the bench takes a different mentality, and it's a different, set of preparation to do when you're coming off the bench, versus starting. So I understand that perspective from Ime Udoka. I will say that the one thing that popped up that I think is something that we wanted to talk about here to round things out was a bit of information shared by a good friend of the program, Red 94, who brought up this point that he said on social media on the site formerly known as Twitter, that he was told Jabari Smith Jr. has basically just chained himself to KD, and that he's asked the staff to tailor his entire schedule to being with KD at all times. Now, first off, I will say I know Rahat, and I know some of his sources, and so I trust him when he shares information like this. And I would urge everybody else to trust him when he shares information like this. And so I find this incredibly encouraging, not surprising, but also just really encouraging, hearing this, that Jabari understands the gravity of what's in front of him and how important it's going to be for him to soak up as much knowledge and information as he can from KD to ultimately better himself as a player.
Yeah, man. I mean, the young man knows wisdom, and so I can credit him for that. To know what you know, and then to know what you don't know, and then to have this living, walking legend in front of you. And it's an incredible opportunity for Jabari Smith Jr. that he cannot afford to pass up, right? Kevin Durant is 37, just turned 37 years old, so happy belated birthday to him. And look, just Father Time is undefeated. Just to not to be cliche here, but we understand that you can only play this game but for so long. So it's not like And he talked about, Kevin Durant talked about his intention to sign an extension. So he's going to be around, not just for this year, but knock on wood, stays healthy, signs that extension, and he plays a few seasons for the Rockets. But it's not like he's going to be around forever. It's not like he's going to be able to give Jabari Smith the game in this facet, in this way, forever. So why not take advantage of it? It's not like Jabari Smith Jr. has had anything like this to learn from throughout his career. Like there's just no comparison for it. And that's with all due respect to who his teammates were before, but there was just no one for him to soak up this kind of knowledge from. And so when you think about Kevin Durant, like it's not like Jabari Smith Jr. is going to be Kevin Durant or even like a poor man's Kevin Durant. But when you talk about what his actual skill set is, Jabari Smith Jr.'s, and for one thing, the opportunities that are going to be in front of him to knock down shots because of the attention that both Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun are assuredly going to attract from opposing defenses. There's going to be opportunities there for him to maximize his game, but then also like in terms of expanding his game, learning how to pick his spots and exactly just what that looks like. I think Kevin Durant, being around Kevin Durant and soaking up as much information as you can, like a sponge, soaking up as much as you can from Kevin Durant is a good idea for somebody like Jabari Smith, who has had some highlights, has had some really good moments, but I think all of us to a man would agree that while he's been good, there is untapped potential there and plenty that he is yet to reach. And so I don't think it's automatic that just, attaching himself at the hip to Kevin Durant means that he's going to realize that potential. But I think it increases his chances a great deal.
It certainly won't hurt things, right? And I've already seen like in some online Rockets, fan circles, whatever, people arguing that, it doesn't make sense for Jabari to try and be KD, that he'll never be KD, whatever. And, to a degree, I understand that a little bit, although I do think some of those, some of that commentary is a little harsh, just in the sense that Jabari is still incredibly young. And of all the members of we'll call it all the remaining members, right, of the Rockets young core, Jabari was handed a little bit of a tough hand, right? Because when he got drafted, he was a 3rd overall pick as well, but he got drafted into the Silas era Rockets, and he really, he was basically just told to be a role player, his first year in the NBA, even though the Rockets weren't doing much of anything, right? That could have been the year where Jabari could have really spread his wings and had some opportunities to really flesh out his offense and show what he was capable of. And Silas was like, no, go stand in the corner, right? Like that was his role. And then Ime comes in and the Rockets start playing winning basketball. And unfortunately, in that context, Jabari was asked to continue to be a role player, right? Keep your head down, do your job, play hard defense, rebound, and stand on the 3-point line, do your thing. Like the Rockets didn't really have time or the runway to play with Jabari's development and see, hey, what more is there here? Right? What more can you be? Because they were ready to start winning games. That's what Ime wanted. That's what the organization wanted. They took that step in that direction. And then last year, they took another step in that direction. And yet this entire time, despite being a 3rd overall pick, despite being the go-to guy for his entire career up to that point, Jabari has been nothing short of like an absolute consummate professional. He hasn't been, disgruntled. He didn't throw a fit when he lost his starting role to Ime Thompson last season. Like he has been nothing but just a complete team player top to bottom. And if learning from and being under the tutelage of KD can be the thing, as well as maybe just natural progression of his game, right? I mean, he's coming into year 4 now. We see players take, little leaps or mini leaps every year through these first 3, 4, 5 seasons generally. He might have just taken a step forward even without KD this season, but adding KD to the mix certainly helps things a little bit. If Jabari can just take like even a little bit of KD's game, right? Like just a little bit of the idea of like, hey, like maybe he'll never have KD's handle, but that doesn't mean he can't learn a few things from KD about how he's facing certain guys up and when he's operating at the elbow or if he's got a defender on his back and he gets to that post up turnaround, like little tips and tricks and, things that KD does that Jabari does have the physical gifts to be able to emulate some of. if that can bump Jabari up a little bit, if he can get 2 or 3 extra buckets per game, if he can maybe be a little bit more of a go-to scorer at times in certain situations for the Rockets as like a, maybe, I don't want to say off the bench, but like, if he's one of the early sub outs, and then he comes back in and he's got like maybe a bigger offensive role at the end of the first quarter, top of the second quarter kind of thing. There's just a lot for Ime to work with there. And it's a really exciting possibility for Jabari to have all of this opportunity to learn from KD. So I understand the people who are like, he should just focus on being a role player and that's it. But I also think it's unfair to Jabari because I do still think, like you already said, I do think there's some serious untapped potential there that the Rockets really up to this point haven't had the opportunity to dig into. And now they might have the opportunity to dig into this season, both a little bit by necessity because they needed some extra scoring pop from somewhere on the roster after losing both Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks. And also just because now you have the perfect mentor for Jabari in this situation.
Yeah. And I think with both of the young players, both of the number 3 overall picks that we've talked about, Reed Sheppard a moment ago, and now Jabari Smith, I think for the Rockets that them having a clearer and more defined offensive identity, that being, getting the ball to Alperen Sengun, the post-ups, the high post, the elbow, whatever it is that Alperen Sengun is doing, however he's initiating the offense. Same thing with Kevin Durant, what they do with Amen Thompson. Like, to me, bringing in KD and having a more clear and defined offensive identity will also, I think, settle things and clarify things a bit for guys like Reed Sheppard and Jabari Smith Jr., whether they're role players or whether they take that next step and look like they could be a little bit more than that. We'll see how that plays out. But I think that the clarification of the Rockets' identity to me helps.
There's an offensive hierarchy now.
Yes.
Whereas last year, sometimes it was just kind of a free for all because it was sometimes you, sometimes me, always us, which at times was really cool because like on any given night, like who's going to step up and be like the leading scorer or who's going to, score 20 plus. And like, it could have been any one of like 7 different dudes, but it also kind of left people, I think at times the Rockets offense felt a little lost at times because of it. Like they didn't know who to go to at the end of games. They didn't know who to go to when they hit like an offensive drought, right? Like always, Fred took a shot, but it didn't go in. So like, okay, let's go to Alpi now. Oh, Alpi did. Let's go to Jalen now. And whereas now it's like, okay, KD's your number 1. Sengun and Amen are your 2B to, whatever your second and third options in some, shape or form. And then everybody else kind of falls in line thereafter. And that to your point, right, is going to provide some clarity for everybody up and down the roster.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think he's going to benefit. Jabari Smith Jr. specifically is going to benefit from that. And then we'll see what the KD effect. So that's like the initial KD effect, like for the whole entire team. And then it's going to have its trickle down on Jabari. Then we'll see what's the effect of being around him and picking up some of these subtleties of the game, like what you talked about, whether that's, the catch and shoot or how you come off of a screen or you're, picking your spots in the mid-range game or whatever the case may be, whatever it is that he learns from him. We'll see how all of that plays out after the hierarchy is sort of dealt with. And as KD mentioned on media day, like it could take a little while before they really figure that out. But once they kind of get into the groove of it all, I think at some point things should sing the way you expect them to.
It was certainly a jam-packed day 3 of Rockets training camp. We want your thoughts on everything we discussed in the episode down in the YouTube comments. Brandon, you know the drill. Let everybody know where to track you down at.
Hit me up on Instagram and Threads at B Scott from Hiram Clark. I'm also on the app formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, at Brandon K. Scott. And make sure you check out the B Block podcast wherever it is that you get your podcast.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.